Uganda, site of the world's worst ever mass killings, where recently more than 1,000 cult members were systematically murdered by their religious leaders. We investigate why this dreadful deed took place in a country as strongly religious as this. Kanungu, southwestern Uganda. Headquarters of the Doomsday Cult, the movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God. This is where the worst religious mass murder in modern history was planned. For over 10 years, the cult had been operating in this area, attracting a following of more than 5,000 members. Last year, the cult leaders convinced their followers that the start of the new millennium would be the end of the world. Cult members sold off everything, believing that they would go to heaven in Noah's Ark. When the world didn't end, more than 500 people, including many children, were lured here on March the 17th. They were barricaded inside an old makeshift church. Then they were set alight. At the scene we met two brothers. Their grandfather was among the relatives and friends who died in the inferno.
Atiya, kutwaikira hano yabahereze kusa, tukani turebo muroguru kuchumbuka, abandi ababire basaba nanka, ababire basaba werera hasigara amagufa, gine nigachumbuka, rero abandi bayosibwa ebijwaro, amaraga shohora.
I found most of these bodies, the burnt bodies, because they were burnt, some of them to ashes, and others, of course, all of them beyond recognition. But there were concentrations near the exits, near the doors, which implies there was a bit of a struggle to get out. But the entrances had been nailed and blocked. So there was no way. They must have suffered a terrible death.
The cult leaders spared no one, not even their own family members. One of the masterminds behind the murders was Credonia Morinde, a former prostitute turned Catholic nun. She lived here at Kanungu.
Izoba yogwakana barikwenda kusa yararagire yokuna Credonia yaza yokunanka kugamba nawe ngo aje kuna kutaho ubugenyi ogwa katano omukasheshe.
Ati ngiye fenkuro yanje kuyafire. Implantine mani marunji. Kandi nishasha munonga akuba kunabire njo wito kwampa okijubwe. Nchijanya chira kurunji atagamba kubi. Obumwe akibagire nkoko Kanungu agire ko kunywa sigara munyenka ari na nyokoro mobwe Kanungu.
Ati yedineji ekatutama munonga abo kuba tukafererwamwe abantu bitu bingi hamwe n'abatahi kureba ngo nibahira hanuya kandi ari kushara kuba bihabiha ngo bananke babanze baguze ryabo babone kwija hanuya.
These are the cult leaders who killed in the name of religion. Many of them were priests and nuns in the Catholic Church before they started the cult. They styled many of their ceremonies on the Catholic model and claimed to have visions of the Virgin Mary.
After the fire here at Kanungu, a terrible stench and a large number of flies attracted police attention to this pit latrine. Inside they found the bodies of 6 men, all naked. One man's head had been bashed in, and it is suspected that the others had been poisoned. Although the bodies were exhumed, the unbearable smell still lingers.
The discovery of that grave led police to 6 more sites. There, another 500 corpses were found in mass graves. This is the house of the other mastermind behind the killing spree. 155 bodies were found buried inside Father Dominic Katuribabu's house and in pit latrines outside. Police suspect the victims had been systematically killed since early January. The corpses were cemented under the floors of the house, and maize was planted on the outside graves.
Most of these people had died out of strangulation, because they had even some ropes around their necks. They had folded them 3 times, and I think with a knot on the right. And we also came across some bodies with the skulls which had been smashed. We suspect they were hacked to death. But a big number, we suspect they could have been poisoned.
Barely 20 metres away is the house of Father Dominic's older brother. Harusin Oworianawe lives in abject poverty. He sacrificed his own youth to pay for his younger brother's theology studies in America. He and his wife have no money to leave the area, which they believe is now haunted by spirits. Even local politicians claim they never knew of the murders.
Nkani nchira kwiza obwire bona akabata kanyoleka ekisani kibi bansemerwa nka chairman no bayazaho nk'ikizibu mbine bayazaho kosezi mbine konka ikizibu mbweni cyarugire tukata kucyumanya kandi kanta kosa kutekateka ngudeminiki nabasa kukole kintu ekyo.
Father Dominic also deceived his own nephew. He sold this house to him just before the Kanungu killings. Little did Bart Bainomukama know of its grisly contents. He believes Father Dominic wanted to kill him by inviting him to Kanungu.
I would be killed, because if he had said, you escort me to where I'm going, and then I die from there. So, do you think he loved me? No love he had for me, because he left me in problems only.
It's hard to believe that no one ever suspected the cult leaders. It now seems that Father Dominic abused the ignorance of the extremely religious community.
When these people said that they had had visions of Virgin Mary and the restoration of 10 commandments, which are of course written in the Bible, people took them really seriously, because like Reverend Father Kataribabu, his integrity couldn't be questioned. This is the man who had read theology.
And everyone liked him very much. But now we are totally ashamed. Very much ashamed.
All the activities of the cult were aimed at keeping their deeds a secret. Families belonging to the cult were split up to stop them communicating or asking any questions. With their children in the clutches of the leaders, parents were kept hostage.
Barukunanka barukutambura omu nanka ejo mu ruguudo bati bantu baza kuhinga barukugenda nibakozesa sayini kusha.
They also had one common practice, that whenever you reached this place, you would remove all your clothes and surrender them to them. so that they give you a common address. I think this was meant purposely to ensure that members don't escape.
kandi ekindi ekyakabiri tinakukibasisa kuba bakaba basiiba.
In fact, it's also a common phenomenon that most of the activities were at night. This is when, of course, in villages like here, people sleep at around 7 in the evening. So they would, of course, nobody would detect any activity going on at night.
They said that we should leave schools.
These people knew what they were doing. They were doing it systematically.
Uganda is looking for answers and scapegoats. More than 70% of the population is devoutly Christian. The Catholic Church has the largest following. It now stands accused. Why didn't it warn its members against the cult? Why did so many devout Catholics leave the church and flock to the cult?
These cult leaders were respected members, as you've heard from here, in the Catholic Church mainstream. And you know, in the Catholic or most regions, there is no question of asking. If you start asking questions, you are seen as if you are querying your God, the Creator.
The Kanungu thing came out as the mainstream churches in that area failed to respond to the needs of those very people.
I think that's a very bothering question to all of us. Did we do enough? Should we have done more? But then the bishop said, what could we have done?
Behind this cult, or in the leadership of this cult, were some recognized authorities, like 2 Catholic priests, who maintained, even after being suspended, that they were Catholic priests, they dressed like Catholic priests, they carried themselves around like people belonging to a well-established and respected church.
We, the mainstream churches, I think have got an indicator that perhaps people may be leaving us because of certain reasons. We have to go ahead and search for those reasons.
In Uganda, the born-again churches are mushrooming. There's no control over these churches or their activities. In the capital of Kampala alone, there are hundreds of charismatic churches. They lure believers with fire and brimstone sermons and promises of miracles. Often, their target is the unemployed. After the Kanungu incident, many born-again churches distanced themselves from the movement for the restoration of the 10 Commandments of God. But their fanaticism and unconventional methods are now also being questioned, as fears grow that they too might be a breeding ground for extremists.
Born-again churches, which are very spiritual and very what shall I say, they demonstrate their feelings and their emotions, and they are also being questioned. People are wondering whether they are not taking people for a ride.
Some people may be going to these churches, the new churches or the sects, because they promise heaven on earth. You know, they promise the miracles.
No, I would say we don't have any links with any cults. Why? Because we are not cults associated in anything that is sort of mystifying and everything. We are following the principle of Christianity, the foundations of Christianity, and this is the Bible.
But the hardest questions are left for government. Why didn't it prevent the death of more than 1,000 of its people? Did it allow freedom of religion to be abused? With a pending referendum, the cult killings couldn't have come at a worse time for government. Ugandans have to decide on June the 29th whether they want a multi-party democracy to replace President Yoweri Museveni's one-party government. Uganda has abundant freedom of speech. Museveni's critics and opponents are making the most of it, using the tragedy as a political football.
Uganda has been a country with unstable politics, and it needed somebody with strong legs to be able to withstand.
The political opportunists say it is the government because they are diving in for the referendum.
Well, I don't think that the unfortunate Kanungu killings will have any significant impact on the referendum. No. No, definitely not. The people of Uganda know that this was a sect that really went off track.
People don't see hope, and the state does not intervene to reach them. The governments are so poor, the tax collected are so little, there's almost no service available for the poorest people in the rural areas. They don't feel government.
I think so. Because, in most of our developing countries, let me say, like in my country here, Uganda, the poverty, the people are trying to survive, There's so much biting poverty. So if somebody comes and suggests a way of becoming rich very fast, it could appeal to people.
After the horror and religious persecution of Idi Amin's reign, the present government guaranteed absolute freedom of worship.
In fact, the criticism instead we get as a government is that we have been too liberal, and that because we have been too liberal, that's why some of the people and some of the sects have gone to extreme cases.
For very many local leaders and national leaders in this country, the churches and the state have a good relationship, and the state is not quick to interfere with the church. So there was a reluctance. There was a sort of a reluctance to believe that a priest could be up to something funny.
Nevertheless, we value, we cherish this freedom of conscience, freedom of worship. We respect it, and unless somebody really goes out of his way or her way to violate the law or to do the very bad things, we normally don't intervene as a government.
The security organisations were caught by surprise, and there's been a huge public outcry over their failure to detect the murder plot. The cash-strapped police say it's nearly impossible to investigate churches in a country as religious as Uganda. There are simply too many.
You could see that the police was completely incapable of handling the problem when it came to exhuming the bodies. And you can also imagine that even with respect to investigating, that they were equally ill-equipped.
At times we get criticized for not detecting and preventing acts of this nature. And at the same time, when we intervene in some of these cults, you find there are some political and some civic leaders who are saying, why should we interfere with our freedom of worship, which is embedded in our constitution?
We are beginning to see that there was a level of complicity by some of the local leaders. It seems that some of them were seeing something wrong that needed investigation, but didn't move on to investigate because they were offered presence?
Well, the Kanungu incident really has been an eye-opener. Government is now more alert, and we are looking at some of these sects a little more closely in order to prevent anything close to what the Kanungu fiasco brought about.
3 months after the Kanungu fire, the people of Uganda are still grappling to make sense of the tragedy. They can't understand why they were betrayed by religious leaders, the very people who are supposed to look after their spiritual well-being. But there are several theories about the cult leaders' motives.
The year 2000, the end of the world. People were so obsessed with it all over the world. Now, it happens, the war didn't end. Now, I had told the people I'm the leader, and I've told the people the war is going to end. They have given me all their money, they have given me all their trust. I could lose the followers. That could be one of the reasons why these people had to be killed.
I think it's a spirit, as the devil is. He can come in anyone, even a president. Then he makes him do whatever he does, then he comes out. Then when you come back to yourself, you realize that I wouldn't have done that.
People were supposed to give in their money to pay almost for their faith. And these guys, the leaders, may have accumulated a lot of wealth from these people. And then, what to do with the people after the end of the war? They want their wealth back. So what do you do? Kill them.
There is a level of spiritism where the more you excel in that field, you desist from either taking the diet, the foods and whatever, you take blood.
Another theory could be madness, total madness. Another one could be satanic, there's now they talk in America and everywhere, even in Kenya and the other countries, people are worshipping the devil.
I suspect that these people were goat and blood was drained out for sacrifices.
Because what you read in the papers, people even sucking blood from the victims. Perhaps these people, the cult had got to that extent that they were worshipping the devil. And once the devil takes control of one's life, he can't do anything.
The cult leaders have all disappeared. Police are offering 2 million Ugandan shillings for information on their whereabouts. In a new twist, they suspect that Dominic Kataribabu and Credonium Werinde have fled to Europe. The other murderers might have perished in the Kanungu fire.
We are still investigating, definitely. We have not got evidence to show that they are dead, but we highly suspect that they could have died in that inferno.
We are definitely looking for Chibwetere in Uganda and beyond Uganda. And we're asking the international community, friends of Uganda, friends of justice, friends of a fair and a peaceful society to support and assist the people of Uganda in this manhunt for Chibwetere.
But the cult is not dead. A survivor of the massacre is again recruiting followers. The horror of the slayings has done nothing to weaken the faith of ordinary Ugandans. Father Dominic's brother and his wife still cling to their religion. They have nothing else.